Had me laughing over here, brother. You left me when the record button went on. Man, you had me laughing. He said,
What?
I told the brother, I said, man, I don't want to throw you off your game. He said, that can't happen. Click, record. Woo, live. I said, oh, man, Mike just left me with the mic drop. Oh, my gosh.
We ready? I look at a lot of our notes that we have and that we go back and forth. Let me turn this down a little bit. That sounds too loud. We go back and forth with, and you were talking about preparation, and we're getting to that during this conversation because I love this preparation during the stillness, and I think we'll get in depth during this episode, this vision fulfilled episode, as we've been talking about vision for the past, I don't know, since the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
So it's like a few weeks. So it's a great time for us to kind of, in regards to this specific topic, kind of turn the corner. Let's finish this up because the information is impactful. The information is it's being tested and has been tested. I think a lot of things we talk about are already there. We just kind of bring it to the forefront, which is a blessing for us to get the opportunity. Hey everyone, this is Mike Seville. I'm with Joel Simmons. Mike Seville here. I need to figure out how to turn this up louder. And of course, Joel Simmons of the Tenacity Foundation. We are here. It is Community Beacon. I'm excited. Always good to get with the brother at least once a week. Should be more. I don't know. We got to figure it out. So many things going on, but the brother is a priority for me personally because
Likewise. I appreciate that.
yeah, iron sharpens iron. So there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of thought that when we get together, it kind of just bubbles up. There's the synergy. There's the multiplication. It's exponential growth where 1 times 1 shouts out to Terrence Howard doesn't equal 1.
Okay. Yeah. We're back into it, y'all. We started this a little while ago.
So this is good. This is good stuff. Let's jump into it. Vision fulfilled, reflection, the next steps. Okay, let's not jump into it. Super Bowl. I hope everyone caught it.
Oh my gosh, man! What happened? What happened?
I didn't watch one snap. That's
well, I saw the whole thing. I was working. I was working.
Oh, so you get it? Yeah.
Yo, the TV was larger than this wall. And you know the wall in my house, in this room that I'm in. The TV was larger than the entire wall right here, Mike.
Was it like a projection or what was it?
100 feet wide.
You had a projection type screen or?
No, I was working at a Super Bowl party being put on by a really large business, and they had brought out one of those jumbo scron TVs with bass and everything. Yo, the amount of food that I ate, Mike, I had ribs. I had ribs, I had wings, I had jambalaya, I had man, I can't even think about the whole thing. I had a list of food. Hold on, it's in here.
One would say a smorgasbord.
I got it.
A smorgasbord of food.
Look, tacos, ribs, jambalaya, shrimp, nothing but cakes, cookies, hush puppies, popcorn, water, Coca-Cola, wings. I mean, and then I'm not even naming all of it. And it all kept coming out fresh, hot.
That's a party.
Eat as much as you want. Oh, man. And I got paid. Oh, I got paid good. I got paid good to do that.
That's the icing on the cake.
That's the icing on the cake. All I had to do was just talk to people. Say, hey, man, what you think about that? Oh, man, da-da-da-da-da. That was it. I got paid. Come on.
There you go. I'm glad to hear it, brother. I'm glad you got paid for it. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I mean, from the score, it seemed crazy. I did, see the score, and I'm not in football anymore, but you just don't expect that from the top 2 teams in the NFL not to have a competitive, game. A lot of people would like to see it come down to the last quarter, except for the Eagle fans. They were like, put some more points up, please.
All right,
Don't even make it close.
Nothing against Jalen or the entire Eagles team. But I think that Las Vegas won this one right here. I mean, like, they came in as the underdogs. Now, don't get me wrong now. They had a score to settle. The Eagles had a score to settle. They lost last year. They had a score to settle. They came in there with, that Gert. But the way that Kansas City lost, I mean, you mean to tell me that you can push, how many points did they push? Like 15 points or something like that? They went from 7 to 22, whatever that is, or 6 to 22, however many points that is, right? 16 points, something like that. And they did that in 6.5 minutes, less than 7 minutes left of the fourth quarter. How on earth can you play that well in less than 7 minutes that you can go up 16 points and you ain't got nothing for 3 quarters? What? Come on, man. Come on now. No, man. I said, you know what? Las Vegas has been losing a lot in gambling, and it was time for them to recoup their money. That's what it was.
Gambling doesn't lose. The house does not lose. Let me tell you that.
The house wanted more money, Mike. They wanted more. They weren't satisfied.
That's it. Man, there's a Bible verse that talks about, I think it's in Habakkuk, where he says, like, death is not satisfied. You can't satisfy death. It's like the greed of man. I want to say it's somewhere in Habakkuk. It might be the Lord's response to the prophet. And Vegas is like that. And I tell people all the time, I said, listen, when you go to Vegas, I don't care if you have $500, $5,000, $50,000, $500,000, $5 million. Vegas has a way to take it all. So when you go, make sure that it's money that you can lose if you decide to gamble, because they have $20 rooms, $200 rooms, a night rooms, $2,000 a night rooms, $20,000 a night rooms. Like it doesn't stop. And the tables are the same way. The food is the same way. You can go to a buffet that's $15 all the way up to, hundreds of dollars. So, and thousands of dollars. You can spend the money. Vegas will take it. And so they never lose. This is, I guess, a quick sidebar, because I was having this conversation. I said these, and now that sports gambling has hit the internet, they can buy each and every one of your podcasters and influencers. So if you look at some of the major podcasts, they're backed by some type of sports gambling, whatever bets, whatever it is. And they've essentially taught people how, people who were never gambling before are gambling now on parlays, so on and so forth. So when you see like some of these podcasters are getting these $40 million deals, $20 million deals, $50 to sponsor a podcast, it's a drop in the bucket. And then the money's not real. And last thing on it was the Hard Rock in itself. When the Hard Rock went and built, and some people are familiar with that, with the Seminole Hard Rock. When the Hard Rock built in Hollywood, this, that essentially now iconic building, the guitar-looking building in Hollywood. Is Hollywood? Is that where it is, Fort Lauderdale? The Hard Rock.
Technically, the address is in Fort Lauderdale, but it is called by Hollywood.
Okay. The construction on that building was billions of dollars. It went on for 24 hours. Like, it didn't stop. They had different shifts because they needed to get it done quicker so that it didn't affect their actual gambling profit. So when we're saying that, and they were paying, and when you do 24 hours, you get those wages. So they had we got buildings here, the Bristol, and I can say these different places because I know someone who worked on it, who actually, gave the estimates and so on and so forth. And this person was saying that this is the only company that, like, they didn't even give them, like, normally people are waiting 30 to 60 days to pay the construction people, so on and so forth. They were just cutting the check, get it moving. And this person has done huge buildings, and he's never seen owners like, the Seminoles would be the owners who did it this kind of way. They just get the job done. I don't, ultimately, I'm sure they did care, but how much it costs, because normally these owners are going back and forth in regards, trying to free up money, so shouts out to however they figure that out. Right now, there's a well of money in this industry, and like government does, it will be clamped down on. But as of now, they'll wait till it gets out of hand, because and I think it has gotten out of hand, because I'm starting, gambling addiction is probably what, it's up there. Gambling, alcohol, so on and so forth. It is up there. Gamblers Anonymous is not there. It's not something for not a reason. And I think we'll see an influx in it. So, hey, if you want to make some money, you can turn the corner on that and help some people, because they're going to need it.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, man. Your scripture, Proverbs 27:20, hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. Is that what you're referring to?
No, this was Habakkuk, but essentially that's the same.
Something else? Okay.
Yeah. This one was in Habakkuk. I'm almost certain, but that scripture speaks to it as well. I can go find it.
Yeah, we'll get it somewhere along the way, man. It'll pop up. I always like, when we throw out these scriptures, it may take us a minute sometimes to go get it, but I like to throw it out there because I know a lot of our viewers, they appreciate those scriptures too. They may go back and look at it later, So if you're looking for it, because I know you might have it close by, I'm game to hear it. I know it's in there. Yeah, man, let's break open this conversation, right? Let's break open this conversation and really get into getting into, that reflection on growth and accomplishment. Man, we've been talking about, vision and, setting up your mindset. We talked about Habakkuk, and we talked about write the vision, make it plain upon the tables that he that readeth may run. We've been talking about these things for quite some time. I actually think that the first season, we had considered that to be like our tag phrase for all of our shows, just for Community Beacon in general. And I think that it's not something bad that we should have thought about. I think it's a very good thing, because it's very positive and it's very fulfilling, right? It's a very fulfilling thing. And I think that makes a huge difference, being fulfilling like that, and being able to think about where you're headed and why you're going there. But today, our show is, in the culmination of everything, it's all about alignment and accountability. It's about reflecting, evaluating, and preparing for your growth. So we've talked about having the vision. We talked about those different steps. We talked about that creative process. We talked about those distractions. We've talked about those boundaries. We've talked about the process. We've talked about so many different aspects of, this whole visioning, right? And this whole planning process. And so I think that you might want to go back and check some of these videos out. We probably have been doing this for about 4 or 5 sessions. And today is a pre-recorded one. So we'll be checking to see what you have to say inside of the chat later on, so we could hear what you think about it and where you think we might want to go next. But I want to open it up like this, right? So James Cash said this: growth is never by mere chance. It is the result of forces working together. And I think that in the culmination of everything, it is to understand that where we are going is really all up to us. That's the process of visioneering, right? That is the mindset of visioneering. That is the thought process of visioneering. That is the mission of visioneering, is that we no longer allow growth to just happen. I know when I think about who's what's his name up there in Tampa, Mike? We talk about him all the time. Myron Golden.
Myron, yeah.
Myron talks about this all the time. Thank you, brother. All the time. And I tend to agree with him. I actually started to change my wordology based off of something that he said because I agree with him so much. And he said it's not evolution, it's development. And I love that statement. I know that there's
Say it again.
evolutionary.
Say it again.
He said it's not about evolution, it's about development.
Mm.
It's not about evolving, it's about developing. And I know evolutionaries out there will probably want to, argue tooth and nail with me on this, but I love the thought process of that so greatly because evolution is when something does it of its own self, and development is when somebody works on something for it to have that growth and that change. And I really believe that that's where we are as human beings. We are developing things. Even God Himself took the time to create something and then to curate what He created. And so, for us as being children of the great and most high, we should be curating what we have developed, what we have created in some sense, or what we have uh, what we have instead of creation. I'm searching for a word, so it'll come to me, I suppose. But we'll use the word created. But the things that we create, the things that are within our power that we make, let's use the word make to because making is to take other substances and to bring them together to manifest something new, right? Versus create is to take something out of nothing and to make it then appear. So the things that we make, when we're putting those things together, it's like now it's up to us to curate and to process and to develop that thing, whatever it is, to the next level and the next level and the next level, like a ball, a golf ball, a basketball, a football. All of these things have gone through multiple processes in order to become the item that is being used in sports today, right? They've all gone through multiple processes. A hammer, multiple processes, but those processes came by the hands of somebody who envisioned something greater and then went into study, sometimes deep study, and then went into science and manufacturing and assistance and created or made something greater than what it originally was in order for it to be something that was more productive. So growth is not by mere chance. Somebody has to take time, effort, energy, willpower, and have some type of vision of what they desire to have and or see. And then those forces must come together and be put to actual work, physical work, activity. And that is what gives us the opportunity of our visions, our dreams becoming realities. What say you?
I say it's a lot of it's a lot to unpack. Like the statements in within itself. Evolution versus development, developing something versus the evolution, creating something, so to speak. And the thought came to mind. They say never, you don't need to recreate the wheel. I didn't say never recreate the wheel, but there's no need to recreate the wheel. You just add on to it and make it better. So we've already had all of these lessons, right? Like a lot of us we've already went through something. And it wasn't Myron, but someone said, I think it had to be Eric Thomas, say, don't just go through something for nothing, right? Like
Man.
don't just, let us not just cast away all of these things that we've been through and we've gone through. We get to add on to it. And another word that you use that I love is that we get to curate these things. So as opposed to, and because it's all a part of creation. So even the word that you're looking for, I'm not even sure, and I'm sure we'll think of it or we'll figure out a way how to make it come together, because the creation is already done, right? So now the curating part, curating all these things to make this actual vision happen, right? And the becoming of it. So I want you to continue with it, brother, because I think you're on the right. I think we're on the right track. And I found the verse, and I know it's interrupting our flow, but I just want to
go for it.
I want to take it off the screen. So it's Habakkuk 2 verse 5. It said, "Moreover, wine is a traitor, an arrogant man who is never at rest. His greed is as wide as Sheol, like death. He has never enough." So this, somehow we were talking about like never have enough, like death never has enough. It's never satisfied. I think we were talking about gambling at that time. Vegas is never satisfied. All right.
Vegas is never satisfied.
I'm off that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and you know what? That's probably something that we ought to dive into at some point in time. Not the whole part about, like the Vegas thing, but maybe that this might even spill into a whole nother arena of conversations, but about that whole never satisfied, that desire versus drive, when it comes down to it,
This is the episode, brother. Let's talk about that. I think because part of this vision episode, we were saying like, what do you do, quote unquote, for the next vision? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on desire versus drive.
I mean, I don't know if that would be the right analogy. Desire versus drive. I think I'd like to dive into a little bit deeper, but like just from the surface standpoint, having a desire about something doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing, right? It does not have to be a negative thing, because even in the scriptures, we're taught that the Lord will give us the desires of our heart. So there is something about the alignment of things, which is part of what we're talking about in this session. So I see why you wanted to open that up, because we're talking about alignment and accountability. And a desire is not, it isn't something that we should go against necessarily, but we definitely should check ourselves to see if we are actually inside the realm of where we're headed. I think that's very important, just the whole accountability of it. And the drive of something is like that internal motivation. So that's why I said I'm not sure if that would be the right analogy, because to have a desire to do something, and especially if your desire is pure and of good intent, I don't see anything wrong with it. And then having the drive to do it, which is to have the self-motivation so that you don't need extenuating or external factors to promote the cause in which you are proceeding for. I think that those two things are good. So that'll be interesting. I think we should definitely dive into that at a higher level. Tell me what you think about it.
I think desire is a dirty word. Okay. I'm gonna die. I want to sink my teeth into a little bit. And the only reason, and the being is really, the reason being is really on a conscious level, like where does it come from? So I love when we talk about the alignment and the accountability, and we've been speaking about this since the beginning, of this series. We talk about alignment, we talk about accountability, and that comes up a lot. And then you mentioned a second ago, like checking yourself. When we have desires, we really need to check, where is that coming from? Like, is it coming from a carnal place? Is it coming from an outside force that's giving this desire? We see all these different things. I want the nice house, the Bentley, the wife, whatever it is. Like, where is it coming from? Now, if you know yourself, which most of us don't, let's just be honest about this. Like, this is like 99% of people aren't willing to do the work. If more people were willing to do the work, we'd have 1 billion views by now, because this, what we do is work. Sometimes we get off of this broadcast and we're like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot to dive into, and the work is never done. So for the people who are attempting to, I have a 95-5 rule. 95% of people, they are just, it is what it is. It's lost. You know what I mean? God is better than me. God says a third of us will make it. You know what I mean? And someone else was saying at any point there's 36. I think it was a Jewish guy who was talking about it. There's only 36 righteous people in the world. Like, I mean, it gets deep as how many people. I don't want to get too deep into the numbers, but these are the numbers out there. What I'm saying is there's not a lot of people. So 2 to 3% of the people who I think we tend to speak to we're on the fence, which is not a good place to be. It's like a lukewarm. This is, to me, is purgatory when you're in that 2 to 3%, because you're like, I want to be in the world, I want to go to the world. But those people who are really working on themselves, like you really have to dig into what the drive is happening and and what your vision, because you could be going after something that you don't want, and or you continuously searching for something. Like every time, and I'm sure you've met people like this, brother, who have been quote unquote successful as far as the world is concerned, metrics, so on and so forth. And it's like, it's not enough. They're never satisfied with where they are. They always have to be moving. So as we continue in this conversation and saying, okay, so when is, what's the next vision? I'm thinking, we go to some of these good books, some of these sacred texts. How many visions do you get? Like how many? So how many visions do you desire? Right? Like, and who are you trying to prove? Is this? Are you trying to prove something to somebody? Are you your parents, your wife, your kids? Are you trying to prove something, or are you actually these visions are attached to your purpose? How many do you get? We realized, and I think, brother, you and I came to the thought process last year. Definitely, we had conversations about it. Was this peace in this stillness? Like, there's times when we should be, and what was the word? We should just be preparing in the stillness, but it's still like we're being still. You're not trying to jump at every shiny thing. We're not trying to. It's just, I'm being still. I'm waiting on the vision. I'm waiting on. Tarrying is a better word. I'm tarrying while, this vision is becoming clear. So even with this vision fulfilled, is it clearly done? I mean, and when you're writing it down, how many times do you have to write it down to make it crystal clear to yourself? So, so going back to, me answering the desire thing, like, is it truly what your heart desires? You mentioned a verse, brother. Like, is it truly, or is it you placing it upon yourself? You grabbed it. So anytime someone talks about, that's like one of those dirty words to me. Desire. Another quick dirty word that I just want to get out is deserve. Like, deserve and desire are two words that, my antennas go up, because I'm just like, well, what exactly do you deserve?
Well, and those words are so close. They're so close to each other, the root of them, being synonymous. So just for our lookers, for those that are looking through their apps and their dictionaries and everything else, desire. So one definition of desire is a strong feeling of wanting to have something or wishing for something to happen. So that's one of the definitions. There's also one that denotes to, sexual feeling or even appetite, right? And so then there's some other types of ones. They all are kind of roundaboutish in those two realms, right? It's to have a feeling of wanting of something or wishing you had something. So, and I think that this is curious, right? Because here it is. It's like God he's immortal and invisible, right? So you can't see God. You can't see him. But there is a feeling of God in the atmosphere. There's many people, they say, oh man, I feel the goosebumps. I feel the goosebumps. The Lord is in the room, right? And then there's some like Jeremiah when he said that he would abstain from speech because he saw that that the Lord's intention was to actually, bring about this change in the community of um, of Jeremiah's people, right? They were going through they were going through something for their disobedience, and the Lord's desire, as Jeremiah said, was not for good. Now, of course, we know that all things are for good from God, but his perspective was very humanistic at the time because it's hard to see the larger picture when you're in the middle of it. Um, so nonetheless, though, he stated on this one occasion, he said, he said that, Lord, you fooled me. For your word is it's like a fire and it hits like a hammer. So there was a feeling to it. On another occasion, he said, it's like a fire shut up in my bones. So there's a feeling. So the feeling is very important with serving God. The feeling is very important, and being in touch with it, it is one of the ways that we can understand that there is a communication there, whether it's via we hear it from God or we feel it from God or we see the signs or whatever it is that connects us with God. There are these connecting factors, but it's generally not, hey, Jesus walked into my room last night and he told me. That's not what it's all about. So a scripture about this word desire in a different frame. And I think that we kind of framed this right, Mike, because it was not so much about the word, although I understand your point of view on the word from where you're standing, but it's not so much about that, but it's about where does it originate? Where does this desire originate? And where is its origination? So a scripture that I was referring to is the book of Psalms 37, 3, 4. You can even go down to 5, but it said, trust in the Lord and do good, right? So shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. And the very next verse says, delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. So there's this thought process of David where if you trust in God, you do the right things, you're going to live and you're going to eat well, you're going to live well. And then he went on and he was like, don't just stop there, but delight yourself. So enjoy your presence in the Lord. And what will happen is he's going to give you the desires of your heart. He's going to give you the desires of your heart. So that was the thought process of David. Later, and his son, Solomon, attributed to writing the book of Proverbs, said in 10:24, he said, the fear of the wicked, it shall come upon him, but the desires of the righteous shall be granted. And so there is this thought process that there is a desire that is established for for those that are thinking righteously, that are thinking in the pathway of, hey man, I want to do my best. So I think that when the word desire is used for self appetite, when we are just attempting to have all, I think it's more akin to greed, to lust, to lusting after something, to greed after something. When our desire is aligned with something that is greater than some type of righteous factor. And I think that can get twisted because some people can feel as if they're doing the right thing. They can become sincere about doing something and they could be sincerely wrong. But that origin of that desire, that drive to do what is right, I think that has the potential of being a good desire. That's where I'd put it at.
I'm I'm completely aligned with it. I'm completely aligned with it. I would once again, this is a moment for a person to check themselves. when we get, I'm not saying a person doesn't. Everyone has desires. It is what it is. Like, we're having this human experience. So we see things that we wanted. Like, who can say that they've never been in that place? Like, no one would pass that litmus test. There's a saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Woo,
so even when we in our mind have these good intentions, we have to once again check ourselves. What is the reason for us doing these things? There was a time, I'll give you a quick story, not my story, Malcolm X's story, is when he just had finished doing a debate or a talk. I think he was on Berkeley's campus. A young white girl, this is in the movie and in the book, came up to him and said, "What can I do in this struggle?" And Malcolm looked at her and said, "Nothing." Like, there's nothing you can do. This is a person who came up to her, and she walked away in the movie, and probably otherwise, I'm sure, dejected, because most people want to do something, but there's a lot of understanding that comes with it. Like, what you are attempting to do may just make the situation worse, even though you had the good intentions of doing it in the first place. So just like with this vision, it could have the best intentions. I want to bring water or food to homelessness or whatever it is. And then you can have other consequences that are attached with it, but you're doing it, maybe to make yourself feel good. Like, these aren't bad things to do, but was it given to you? Now, you brought up David in that verse, trust in the Lord. So David spoke about trusting in it. And then, so this is really about submission and obedience at the same time. So what does that look like? And there's a bigger thing attributed to it. Like, there's a contribution that's being made to this purpose. The ultimate purpose. So you want to be, what you said, brother, is 1000%. I just want to remind the person that when you get these words, call them whatever you want. Like, I've gotten to the point where, like, it doesn't matter to me, right? But when these things come up, I deserve it. I'm not saying you don't. You're the hardest working person in showbiz, so to speak. I've seen people work 12, 14 hours and, so on and so forth. And you, like, in your mind, from our standpoint, a vantage point, or even their vantage point, like, I deserve this. Like, how can I deserve this? Or why is this being done upon me? Or, whatever the situation is it time for you to check yourself? Check yourself when desire pops up. Like, this is a desire, this is a want, which is essentially saying that I don't have everything it is that I need, which you do. So it's like, we just checking ourselves when these different words come up. Desire, deserve, there's a couple of justice, there's a couple of things that we can go down. But I love for us to make a distinction, but you within yourself make that distinction to make sure that you are aligned in the right path and you're discerning. This is a part of discernment.
That, man, perfect. You made me think about something else during that discourse right there, especially when we started talking about examining ourselves and examining the words. There was a point in time when I don't do it as much. Maybe I should. But I would always, my children, they would wear a shirt and they would say something. I said, what does that mean? And I think that's the key focus on this when it comes down to this. And we're essentially in the first subject of what we're talking about today, which is reflection on growth and accomplishments. But in that process, it's like, if you're using a word to define who you are, you should know what that word means to you at the very least, so that you can stand on something. You should be able to stand on what you say. You should be able to stand on your actions. You should be able to stand on your words. And if your words are wavering, if your actions are wavering, then what exactly are you standing on? You're in the quicksands. And so that's one of the reasons why, in the process of moving towards a vision, it is supremely important that you have clarity. But in order to keep clarity, you have to refine your definition of steps. You have to refine it. You have to reflect on those things. So, too often, we move from one milestone to the next without pausing to assess what we've even learned. I heard you talking about that too, brother. What we don't even know what we've learned. We don't even know what we've gained. So, if we're doing that, there's a chance we can't even repeat that step. We might have gone from step 1 to 2 to 3, and then we passed through 5 and 6 and 7 without even reflecting on 5, 6, or 7. We got to 8, then we got knocked back down. We were knocked down to 6, but we didn't understand how we went from 6 to 7. So then we knocked down to 5. We didn't understand how we got from 5 to 6. So now we're back down at 4, and we're wondering, scratching our head, like, what am I doing here? Because we never learned what was going on. So the definition of what we're doing is so important. Like, we have to take that time to reflect, to bounce that thing off of somebody else. Hey, yo, Mike, let me tell you what just happened. Even if I just get it out, I can hear what my brain is thinking by saying it. Mike don't even have to tell me anything. But I can hear what my brain is saying, because sometimes your brain is saying one thing, but when you speak it, you say something different. That's a huge thing. In order for us to have sustainable growth, it requires intentional reflection, right? So, all right, so Margaret Wheatley said, without reflection, we go blindly on our way, creating more unintended consequences and failing to achieve anything useful. And I love that Arnold, what's his name? Arnold Schwarzenegger, he would say, my father always
Arnold
taught me.
Schwarzenegger, who?
Arnold Schwarzenegger, right?
What?
You don't remember? I hope I'm saying the name right. The brother caught me off guard. The Terminator, right?
Yeah,
He,
yeah.
he wrote a book based off of what his father taught him, and his father taught him be useful. It was either his father or his mother. It's been a while since I read the book, but it was like, be useful, always be useful. That's a huge statement. Two words. Be useful. And it's like, what are we doing? Is it useful at all? And it doesn't have to be useful to everybody, but is it useful to somebody? Is it useful to this body, to me? Is it at least useful to me? That's important. So reflection helps me to know if what I am doing is useful. Because if it's useful, I can grow. I need to mark down those accomplishments because I can grow. I need to be asking myself, what milestones have I achieved and why? What was it? What on earth did I do? Why was that so important? I saw people clapping their hands. But why? Why did they clap their hands? What did I do? I need to be asking myself, do I think that I have grown personally or professionally? Yes. But why? What did I do? Who am I today versus yesterday? What are those key indicators? We talked about that the other day. Key KPIs. What are those things? Forget just thinking about the business. What are my key performance indicators that tells me I'm not the same person that you saw last time? And what challenges have I overcome? What was it that caused me, that nearly knocked me on my butt or did knock me on my butt? And like quoting Les Brown, if you can look up, you can get up. So what knocked me on my backside? I looked up and I got up. What are those things that I have done that I can say, okay, not only do I believe that I'm quote unquote worthy of whatever this is that I quote unquote desire, but this is the reason why I feel that way. And then can I walk in that humbly? I'm going to add that part because I think that that's important, to be able to humbly walk in your greatness I believe takes you to a higher level of greatness, and you deserve the applause. And once again, using the word intentionally, which I think that this is like, these are words that we are using. Mike and I use these words because we want to be intentional. We want the message to go across. And then we give definitions, his version of what he believes, my version of what I believe, because we want people to connect with what is happening behind the word. So that when you take this thing away, you don't say, oh, well, he believes, and give your belief, but he believes because of this. Now you can believe because of that. It's okay. It's okay. But these are those things, right? Reflection on growth and accomplishments. I'm gonna say that's where we're at with this thing. What'd you say, bro?
Nah, everything's spot on. The reflection part of it, and Carl Jung spoke about most people live in a place of projection and don't get to the reflection part of it. So what we live is, we tend to live in a place where we just imagine these things, and you'll hear it. So we'll talk about business when people are always complaining. You know, my friends and family don't support me. The reason why the business failed is because the location, or the reason why this, like, we come up with all these different excuses because we're projecting it. Most of us have heard this before. Oh, one of the most probably in business, one of the most quoted sayings is, a prophet is like not known in his own town or something. Listen, no truly successful business just survives upon the people that they know about. Imagine McDonald's being open and saying, I'm only going to serve friends and family of what's the guy's name? The Ray Kroc, right? So it's an interesting thought. But so it's so important to reflect because of these steps, or the next steps, so you can be more efficient in where you're going. Where are you headed? You know, are you off? Am I not where I wanted to be? I created this thing, but I lost my family at the same time. I created this thing, but I lost my belief in humanity at the same time. I created this thing, and, you know, I'm being thrown every which way. And that will really get you back to asking yourself, like, what am I doing this for? And whose vision is this? Because a lot of us are living a vision projected by somebody else. So that's important. I have a theory, and because we speak about growth a lot, we speak about growth, and that's just maturing. You don't want to be, and here's a word, arrested development. And that happens a lot. You can have conversations with someone who might be 50, 60, 70, and because they fail to grow, they stay in an immature state. And I really believe, like, almost all the world's problems could be solved in these four simple things. It's connection versus, connecting versus not connecting. That separates everything. You can be a speaker, you can be a real estate person, you could be, if you're not connecting, it's not going to land well. So either are you connecting, which has to do with presence, right? And the next thing is immaturity versus maturity. Do I have the ability to take on this information, or have this information and receive it and accept it? I'm observing something. Some people can never accept it. We're indoctrinated with these different things. And that's a whole different conversation. But you got to, these are ways to know, am I growing? Am I growing, or am I still immature? Am I still talking or interacting with people with the same way? And it's easy to get caught up with that. What you'll notice is, once you start to mature and you start to connect, certain people just don't want to be around you. You may not necessarily keep the same friends. You may not, people, because some people are always in a state of immaturity. They have no reason to grow. I already explained this. 95% of people do not want to. 95% of people are living a life of projection and images, and they feel like it needs to be this one way because that's how it was. You got to figure out, like, where did this happen? Where did I, quote unquote, get stuck? The only way you're going to do that is by reflecting and seeing what these steps. What's the point of having one great year that can't be replicated, that you can't teach anybody? There's no information because you never took the time out to actually go back and do some introspection and say, how do I get here? How do you teach this information? It's not really worth anything. You take it to the grave with you, right? If you even get that far. But most people, because most successful people, it's the people who, quote unquote, fail forward. They fail the most, but they just continue getting back up. They continue getting back up. But most people who fail the first time and they don't sit back and reflect on why they failed, they stay in the same thing. I've seen someone open up a restaurant several times, and each time it's failed, and it's always somebody else's fault. So it's like at some point in time, you take the accountability and say, well, where exactly am I going wrong? At what point did I have momentum, and then I stopped being urgent? I stopped accepting new information. My hiring process. We all know, and ask me how I know, but we all know someone. It might be yourself. It should be yourself, really. You should be able to look at someone else's and notice certain things about them and then take it back to yourself. That's a reflection part, and say, this thing triggered me. What's the trigger? It's the pattern that this person is going through. Now, here's a highly intelligent person, very charismatic, loving, presents as such. But then when you go back, they're still in this secular pattern. Look at it and then take it, then reflect upon yourself. Am I in this secular pattern? Why is it that this is happening? And oftentimes we'll find it's immaturity, and you're not maturing. You're not receiving the information because there's a block somewhere, which now you need to go back to the last episode and not need to start looking about the people that you're hanging around, or someone else, or finding a mentor or counsel or therapist or psychologist, whatever it is that's going to get me past this block that I have that keeps me going into this pattern every time I'm, quote unquote, trigger. It's a trigger. It's called a trigger because the same thing keeps happening again. It's like pressing a button on the game. Someone keeps pressing that button on the game, like for Mario to jump, and you're jumping and you're doing it. You want to get that button off of your life.
Oh, that was deep right there. I wish I could have hit the applause button fast. I missed it. Listen, that's something that you take home with you right there. I love what you just said. What's the trigger? The trigger is the pattern you're going through. That's huge, Mike. I mean, you said a whole lot in that one statement. What is the trigger? Man, I mean, because listen, I've listened to so many different podcasts and read so many different books and listened to so many different books and been at so many different speeches. But I think that may be the first time that I've ever heard somebody clearly define, a trigger like that. I love the way that, and it may just be because it hit me a certain way. It made me, I had to go back and I had to start thinking about some different things like patterns, because this is something that I'm in the middle of doing right now. I'm in the middle of reflection, y'all. I'm in the middle of reflection. But you all know one of my statements is, or one of my philosophies is wherever I find myself, I check myself, which is my way of saying I am reflecting on who I was and who I desire to be and who I am today. I am in, I'm not going to say a constant state of reflection, but when I get to a certain location and I start to think about it, hey, man, how did I get here? Whether it's good or bad, it don't matter to me. How did I do this? What happened? And then I go back. I'll give you a quick story. In short, there was one time when I went out to a therapist, not a therapist, counselor, whatever. One of the two. I won't say that they're the same, but I went out to them, and they asked me question after question after question. So I began to explain some different things, and when I began to explain it, the lady didn't have anything else to give back to me. As a matter of fact, at the end of the session, the lady asked me, she said, well, why don't you go out and you should go out, you should become a therapist yourself. And I looked at her, she was like, I said, well, I coach people. I help people out. I do speeches and coaching and different things like that. I've been mentoring people for, over 2 decades. And she was just so all into it that we actually had to come back together for another session where she should have paid me when I think about it, because the only thing she wanted to know,
why didn't she pay you? There's
and she
something to
could have
reflect
paid
on.
me. She just wanted to.
Why did you say I got my square my square thing in my pocket right now? Let me get
Go
your
ahead
card
and
real quick.
tap right here. Tap right
Yeah.
here.
Cash at my
Yeah. This lady wanted to know how I got to become the type of person that I am and how I could intellectually see things the way that I see them with as much accuracy as I was able to report. It blew her away because because I've honed in my reflection skills. I've honed them in. I prefer to listen to somebody when they're going through something than to tell them what I think they should do. I prefer to listen to pray to God, to ask for direction. I prefer to wait on my moment to speak. I prefer to come in with the thing that I don't know that I know, but I know that it's the right thing to say. Or I prefer to not say a doggone thing and just tell them, hey, man, I know you're going through something hard. You know, I'm here with you. What can we do? Because I have nothing to offer at that moment in that time. I prefer to do all those things because I am constantly checking myself. So when I go before other people, I apply the same tasks, the same tactics, the same skills, and it's just been refined over 2 decades. And so this lady wanted to know how I got to that process and started asking me all those questions to the point where she said, she started reflecting herself. That's when I should have pulled out the square. Listen, I know how much you charge. I charge a little more than you. So just give me the difference. um, but I
I
love that.
and we spoke about those therapists and coaches last week, and I'm telling people competence and integrity, because if she had integrity and you feel like she should have paid you, maybe she should have paid you.
She was. I actually enjoyed her a lot. I enjoyed her a lot. She was a very, very good therapist. I would tell other people to go see her. She's an honest person, and one of the things that I love that she says, you all may not like that, but she says in between every session, she has a restroom, and she goes into a restroom. It's like this little enclosed area, and she says a prayer before and after every single one. She prays for the people that are leaving, for whatever she prays, and she prays for the wisdom to be able to help the person that's coming in the door. And just knowing that she's doing that is that's something special, because part of what we started off our conversation with today is to ensure that our desire is rightly motivated, and to hear somebody admit to that, that's big. I think that's big. So I love that what you said there, Mike. I hope people will underline that in their notes. Ask themselves the question, what's the trigger? The trigger is the pattern that you're going through. It is the reason why you're going through the pattern. The trigger is the reason why you're going through the pattern. And I think that kind of leans into the second part of this, which was clarity. Robin Sherman said, clarity precedes success. This one was a hard one for me. Uh, I recently said a prayer to understand who I am right now. There was a long time ago, almost 10 years ago, Mike. I was trying to figure out what my skills are, I guess, or just trying to understand what it was about me that made me who I am. And one of those words, I ended up naming my business after that, and that's tenacity. I'm tenacious. And these words came to me out of the book of David. So there's a point where David gets ready to go and fight Goliath. And I think I may have told you all some of this story. But when he gets ready to go fight Goliath, the king gives him armor, shield, helmet, all this type of stuff, a sword. And David is ruddy. According to the Bible, he's smaller than his larger brothers who are worn, uh, accustomed to war. And he's a shepherd, and he puts this stuff on, and it's too heavy. The sword's too big. The helmet's too big. It does not fit. So I've got to say, and if it fits, it ships. And what that basically means, if it fits inside your mind, if you take a concept and it fits in your heart, it ships up to your mind and you begin to apply it, or you should. So this thing didn't fit, so it didn't ship. He did not use it. What he decided to do is go by the brook and do what he's always done when he fought the bear, when he fought the lion, when he protected the sheep, when he protected the herd, which was get 5 smooth stones, put them in his satchel, wrap them up. He wrapped them up in parchment in the word of God, which goes back to ensuring that your desire is aligned with your higher power, right? And he goes out, and with 1 smooth stone, he kills the giant or strikes the giant down. And so in my process of praying, I asked for my 5 smooth stones. What is it? And out of those 5 smooth stones, I got 5 words that I went out and I found the definition of them. And I began to apply those words to my life. And the one that hung with me, the one that killed my giant, was tenacity. And I've lived off of that tenacity, for the last 14 years or so, 10 years, I've lived off of that tenacity, named my business after it. So I went back because I can't even remember the other 4. And I don't know where the script is that I wrote them down on the sheet of paper. And I went back and I found some new ones. And one of my new one came up, and they could be the old ones, I just don't remember them, was clarity. And so this was something that I had struggled with over, the last 5 years or so. Is just clarity. Where exactly are you going? And so success without clarity can feel like running on a treadmill, and you're moving, but you're not moving in the right direction, or you're not going anywhere. So the step is about ensuring that your achievements are aligned with your deeper purpose. Your clarity should align you with your deeper purpose, because once your clarity aligns with your deeper purpose, you get off the treadmill and you actually start moving.
It's a word. That when I first started my business, that was the first thing that I spoke to. I think I spoke to Beethoven about it. I said, I don't want to be busy. Like I think, especially when you become self-employed, we are our best and our worst bosses, like the self-employed person, because sometimes you give yourself time off when you shouldn't be taking time off, and sometimes you're working when you shouldn't be working. And a lot of progress happens in the still moments. Like it's weird for most people. A lot of people, and that's why a lot of people don't figure out why they're not growing. I often relate it to the gym. I see the same people. I've been going to the gym since 2000. This particular gym, since it opened, which like 2008, 7, something like that. And what's interesting is there's the same amount of people. There's certain people that have been there since there as well. And you notice that there's no progress, but they're there. I mean, I'm there 5 to 7 days a week, so I see them. It's not like they're not going to the gym. But then when you actually understand biology, it's like the muscle growth happens when you're sleeping, like when you're in rest. That's when the majority, and if you just continue going and you're going. So a lot of the times we're looking at certain metrics or certain KPIs, and they're the wrong ones. So you really need to get clear on what it is and exactly how it works. So a lot of things happen in the time of rest. I did want to touch on one thing you said, brother, because we spoke about the reflection. So we project on what it is that we want, right? And we go through this process, and then we have a chance to reflect on the whatever happened. That's a beautiful thing for us to write all these things down, things we accomplished. Even better if you have certain steps that you use in order to get to where you are, so you can replicate whatever the process is, the successful process. Then there's a time of integration. This is the most powerful of it all. Like and this even goes back into the development portion of it. You need to fully integrate, you need to fully embody this being that you are becoming or have become. Once you have, nothing is wasted. That's just the way the world works. Nature abhors a vacuum, so nothing is wasted, nothing is being sucked out. Something steps up. This, I don't want to get too into psychology, but this has to do with your triggers. Something is stepping up. What we need to do is figure out all these different parts of ourselves, our process, and we integrate it into ourselves, our business. It's all the same to me. So once you start to integrate it into ourselves and our being, like you just spoke about, you said something and you said, and I've been doing the work of therapy, so on and so forth for 20 years. Not only have you been doing it, you are it. And so you embody it to the point where it's almost effortless, right? Like for her to do possibly, I don't know this person from Adam, but the average therapist who's attempting to be as introspective as you are and are able to bring a certain type of compassion and your being to the conversation, it takes more effort initially because you've already been it for the past 20 years. You've stepped into that role, and so it just comes like it's natural to you, quote unquote natural. They say he's naturally this. He's not naturally this. He's just been doing it a long time. It looks effortless. It's almost, people want to be real estate agents. Oh, it just looks. I just make it look real easy because it is what it is. I don't have to exert as much force now as I did when I first started getting this thing moving. Right. So it's in our being. It's just not, it comes natural, so to speak, but we've worked on it. We've gotten more reps. We've had more focus and effort put onto this thing. So the integration part, which might need to be an entire different episode, is what's missing, because oftentimes we go back and sometimes in our reflection, here's the misstep. It's like, I want to cut this thing out. What are you cutting out? What part of it are you cutting out? What's the reasoning for you cutting out? Is it effective? Is it not productive? Like, we have to start asking ourselves these questions as to why we're, quote unquote, cutting it out, or we're repressing certain things. Like, we're repressing these certain parts of our nature because either it's said that it's bad, it's not the way of the world, it's not in style, it's not modern, it's not whatever it is. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves 20, 30 years down the road seeing that we are off course at this point. So it's so important to go back and get into this alignment, get accountable, which I think is an episode that we'll delve in again, because we talk about accountability all the time, but really as a man, like this is the step above all steps. In the business, this is the step of all steps if you're a quote unquote boss. Like, everybody wants to be a boss nowadays. Understand that the accountability is it. Like, you're accountable. It's your fault. And then we go on to it, but then that I think this is where it's missing from most people, is this integration part, and not taking into account those things after we do the reflection or while we're doing the reflection. How do I integrate this? And it's said, how do you integrate this into your business? How do I integrate this into my life? How do I integrate this way of living into my diet? How does this happen? Who? And then ultimately, when you get to another level, it's like, who do I need to speak to about this to make to make this process go a little bit quicker? Like, who is it? And that's it, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, integration. I love that. And you had made that quote earlier. You said most people live in a place of projection, I believe, and don't get to reflection. And then you said integration is the next key component or step. And then you said it's the full embodiment or use of that reflection. So it's like, if you're reflecting, it does you no good if you don't integrate what it is that you learn. And I think we've talked about that a few times here today too. It's like, you have to learn something from these things. And I think that lends also to clarity. Because if you're not learning, there's a saying, if you're not learning, you're not earning, but we're not gonna go there right now. But it's like, if you're not learning, if you're not learning, then how can you be clear on where you're going? Like these things, they're like the grooves of the working measures, right? It's like the zipper. There's a groove, and each groove is like lined up right next to each other. You really can't skip one. If you skip one, then the zipper will not travel up or down. It'll get stuck. And it's like all of these things, every single one of these words that we're using, there's actions that come with it, right? And the reaction is how smooth the process will be. If we miss a groove, the process becomes rigid and becomes difficult. When it becomes difficult, where you are, you should check that out. You will, and here it is. If you're not learning, you're not earning. In the time it takes for you to reflect, even if that time seems like it's greater than pushing through that rigidness, the reflection may actually give you the guidance on what you need to change, pivot, or integrate to make the process smoother. Listen, I'm saying these things, but these things are not always so, they are simple, but they are not always, they're not always, let me just use the word easy. And the reason why I want to use that word is because I don't want to do it. That's why. Okay, I'm not, but and so if you want to use that word, you may not be at a level that you may not be at the same level that I'm at. Not saying that it's greater or lower or even equal. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we
I'm
may not
saying it's
even be playing
greater.
the same game, right?
We're
But
we're not playing the same game. You are not. If you don't, if a person, let's just be blunt and clear. If a person doesn't understand that, they're not playing the same game. Understand and realize that. When I was going through the family court thing, I realized quickly I'm not playing the same game. When I'm in business and people are talking to me about business, and I'm like, I'm not playing the same game. I'm focused on, brother, shouts out to Dre Taylor. He said, I'm focused on the primary. When you get to focus on the primary thing, which is more than you, this is, I don't want to get into preaching, but when you start to submit to a higher power, when you start to be obedient to a higher power, you're not playing the same game because the metrics aren't the same. We're not talking. You're talking to me about views, right? Like a person would talk to me about views. You know how many tactics and tricks a person can sell you if that's what it is? When you walk into a marketing company and you're asking them about your views, they're like that game is over with. That was great back, maybe 5-7 years ago, but now they're like, okay, you're talking about views. I'm gonna show your video to somebody in some country. Yeah.
Russia.
And they just excited to see some of the stuff you have, and you'll see 15,000 people who viewed it. But what you really wanted, which is why you need to get clear on what your goal is, that's a conversation I have with people. Like we can have it as fast as you want or as slow as you want. So I mean to say, because really time is not a thing to me. It's all about focus and effort. But we can get this thing figured out in the next 2 hours if you're open and we can figure this out. Or it can take you 2 years to do it. Like that's totally up to the person I'm talking about. But the first thing I'm asking you is like, well, what is your goal? Okay, this is your goal. What's the reason for your goal? Is it because everybody else is doing it? Our conversation might be cut short. Really figure out what it is. But then if I use my discernment to say, okay, well, this is some real stuff. That's why the passive things people do, the undercutting stuff people do, all this stuff just gets by the words that they use. And it's just like, you're playing a different game than I am. right? I understand that. Okay, you're playing this different game. I don't want to be in that. I'm not in that business, right? So this is that. I'm sorry, brother. I know I cut you off, but when
No, man, you fired up. I like it.
when you mention this game thing, there's so many different levels on it. That's why it's important for you to make these different distinctions. Sometimes when I talk, I need to slow it down because it almost seems, but most of my stuff is like, right, wrong, or indifferent, because there's really only two things. It's very simple, like the brother says, and this is key. Everything is simple. It may not be easy because the world tells you it's not, or because of these triggers that you have, but it's really simple. It's either righteous or it's not. Whether you want to call it evil or whatever you want to call it, it's just these two things. It's righteous or it's not.
Mm.
Except that at times we do things that aren't righteous. You accept that. Don't look at somebody else and say, well, what they doing is this and what they're doing is that. Look what they're doing and say, this triggered me. I don't like that. Okay, so where am I doing this in my life? Because that's why it triggered you. Otherwise, you just walk right past it. And then you say, oh, okay. But then think about all the way that you rationalize this thing. Well, I only did that because only reason why this is, it's okay if you do it at this point in time. No, it's not. It's like it's either it is or it's not. But we have to embody all that stuff because even that other side of us, it's there. Don't pretend like it's not. So these are the different games that it is that we play. There's a book everyone should check out. It's called The Games That People Play. Mm-hmm. It's eye-opening when you start to see this human psychology. But but we play these games with ourselves. Like, it's cool when we give you the example. That's just for you to swallow it. Pause. But it's like, where is this coming up? And here again, it's right, wrong, or indifferent. It's there. Let's not hide like it's not, right? And this is nothing to do with that. And last thing, because I know we're gonna end it quick. The brother says something about humble. we need to walk. I think especially in our community, we have to be careful with the word humble, because oftentimes and we need to differentiate between it, because a lot of men are being put down because they're saying, oh, he's too arrogant, or he's too such and such. Like all these words get thrown around that aren't even, there's no reason for it other than how you make somebody feel, which is really something that they got going on. I'm just going to be humble before God, people. Other than that, it is what it is. I personally am going to humble myself before God. Other than that, if you catch it and say, oh, he's just acting arrogant, that's on you. And that's your issue that you got to deal with. But I'm not going to necessarily dim my light because you feel a certain kind of way, but the way I definitely understand community, we can always work on communication, so I need to look at myself and say, okay, well, if I want to be productive and I want to reach somebody else, then the way that I say things, I may have to change it. But at the end of the day, I get to make that decision. I'm not going to make the decision because someone else told me they felt a certain kind of way. Because sometimes I'm not really talking to you. Well, oftentimes I'm not really talking to a person. And I hear this thing coming from like, such and such said that you're arrogant. Such and such said that you need to be more humble. Or maybe such and such came and say, Mike, you need to be more humble. What makes you say that? What part of my conversation was it that I didn't? Did it show a lack of caring for you as an individual? I'm not that type of person, so that doesn't touch me. Like, what part of it? And then let's have this conversation, because perhaps I'm presenting a different kind of way that you're not used to. And a lot of people aren't used to seeing certain people come off a certain kind of way because they've never seen it before. But it's here. And I'm gonna show you. All right, I'm done.
Yeah, I like it. I like it, man. Especially right now, dealing with men today.
Come on,
I like it because it's so very important for. I hate to use the cliche for a man to be a man, but I got to use it. I feel like I should use it right now. It's just a man should just be a man. Just be a man. Just be a man. Like, let's not shy away from these things because I feel as if, and I feel as if, society has dampened the worth and the value of a man. And for what cause? Because you stand up and you believe in the things that you're actually saying. We started off with that. If you're going to say it, then believe it. If you're going to wear it, believe in it. Like, those things, believe in it. Trust in those things, right? You know, and I think that is important. And I don't think that all arrogance is absolute arrogance, right? I don't think that. I don't believe that. I don't believe it because people misuse words every single day.
Every day.
So simply because somebody says that it is, that does not mean it is. Ask them, what does that look like to you in the first place? Sometimes we just let our ears, Daddy Grace would say, don't let your ears be a dumping ground. Sometimes our ears are wide open sepulchres. We're just dumping garbage into a deathbed, right? And it's not supposed to be that way. We should be more thoughtful. We should be more courageous. We should be more bold. I love the word righteous, but when we talk about righteous, whose righteousness is it? Because if it's a righteousness that is self-made, man-made, I ain't with that righteousness. Show me where it is in the Bible and let's have a discussion about it. And we're going to see, because there's only one who is always right, and that's God. So he's the only one who can have righteousness. Nobody else can have it. Therefore, nobody else can even deem you as righteous except for God. So if you're not doing godly things, I don't know how you got righteousness unless you're telling me that you're always right. And then you have no validation of always being right. None whatsoever, because you have never always been right. There's a scripture in the Bible about the rich young ruler who comes up to Jesus and says, "Good master." He says, "Who is good? Only God is good." So it's like, clarify yourself before you speak to me. And I think, I know we're going to close out on this because we've time is far spent, but here we are right back in, and we're going to end it with clarity. It's like, clarify yourself. We need to have these discussions. There was one point in time when I didn't even like to talk with people because I felt like it was such a waste of time. Oh my God. Having a conversation with somebody whose viewpoint is so misaligned with mine. And maybe this was an arrogant thought of mine in my own mind. I am so far down the road, I ain't got time to talk with you about that. I didn't turn that corner 30 days, 30, a long time ago. I didn't turn that corner. I've already figured out that once you turn the corner, there's going to be a bump. You're going to trip. You're going to fall into it. There's a puddle right there. The car's going to drive by. It's going to splash you. I played that round of the game. So when I came around the corner, I immediately jumped. I put my umbrella out. I blocked the water flow. I talked to the lady because that kept me from getting hit by the thing that was falling out of the sky. I've already done that. Why are we talking about this? But when you clarify yourself and you give meaning to it, and I'm able to evaluate the meaning behind the words that you're using, there may be room for discussion. May just be room for discussion. Because now that I see the viewpoint behind it, it may add to something, may make me want. And that's why I like what you said, because it's like too many times we just throwing words out there. My ears are not here for you to dump on. Not here for that. I work so hard at being clear at my own thoughts. I ain't got time to deal with somebody else's unclear thoughts. But if you are trying to gain clarity, trying to gain alignment, look, I don't need you to be clear with me or aligned with me, but I can help you get clear with yourself and get aligned with yourself so that you can see what it is you're attempting to do and get there. And I think that's what it's about, man. Let's get off the treadmill, y'all. let's get off the treadmill. There's no success on the treadmill.
Hmm.
I mean, unless your vision is to be on that treadmill and to do XYZ, then you need to get on the treadmill because that's where that's where it happens. That's where your magic happens. And I got no problem with your magic. Let your magic happen where your magic happens. But be clear about it. Know what you're doing when you do what you do. So that you don't have to worry about it. When you come to your successful end, you will be happy. And guess what else?
Fulfilled. Mm-hmm.
And fulfilled. And guess what else? Before you get to the end, you'll be happy because the journey is just as enjoyable as the conclusion.
Mm. We love y'all, man. but is that conscious thought? You know, and so if we're not having that conversation with you, it's because of that. And there's no judgment. I can't judge your journey of 100 steps and I'm at 1,000 steps. And somebody might hear that and feel like that's an arrogant statement that I'm at 1,000 steps and they're at 50 steps. But like the brother said, we done turned that corner, rolled around in it like a pig, crawled in it.
Bumped the head, got the bruises and the scars to match.
We've been there. We love it. I mean, we love y'all, but this is not the conversation for us to be had. So that our time, the amount of focus and effort we spend on it, especially to someone who is not willing to see it, is not really worth the effort on our part. Right. So it's like the focus and the effort. And we're weighing it, So I think that's it, man. This was a time well spent. Vision, y'all. Get clear on it. I'm done. Anything, brother?
All right, until next time.
Yeah. Love y'all. Peace.